He didn't remember the exact moment he decided to give the land away, only the silence that followed the decision. Heavy, absolute, and strangely peaceful, like a storm had passed and left the world, unsure whether it was safe to breathe again. The parcel sat at the edge of Willow Creek, a stretch of uneven green bordered by old oak trees and a fading dirt road. To most people, it was just land, unfinished, unprofitable, forgotten. To him, it had been his father's last remaining asset, a piece of inheritance tied to every memory of a man who believed value wasn't always measured in money. When the town council meeting ended that night, people didn't clap. They didn't even speak for a moment. They just stared at Daniel Mercer like he had misunderstood the assignment of life itself. "You're sure?" someone finally asked. Daniel nodded. "Build the school." That was all it took to change everything. He didn't do it for attention. In fact, he avoided it. He left the meeting before anyone could turn his choice into a speech or a photograph. By morning, word had already spread through Willow Creek. By afternoon, people were calling it a miracle. By evening, they were calling him generous. Daniel called it necessary. The town had no elementary school. Children traveled nearly an hour by bus to the next county. In winter, roads froze over and attendance dropped. Some families moved away entirely. It wasn't dramatic, but it was slow erosion, the kind that empties a place without anyone noticing until it's too late. The land donation changed that trajectory. Construction began in spring. That was when she arrived. Her name was Clara Bennett, and she stepped off a worn-out white truck, with a folder in one hand and purpose in the other. She wasn't loud, but she had the kind of presence that made silence feel intentional. She had been hired to oversee the school's academic development, curriculum design, staffing, community integration. The town had expected someone older, more formal, more distant. Instead, they got her. Jeans dusted with chalk, hair pulled back loosely, eyes scanning everything like she was already planning how to make it better. Daniel first saw her at the construction site. He had come to check on progress, telling himself it was just accountability. But when he stepped onto the half-finished grounds, he found her kneeling beside a group of workers, pointing at blueprints spread across a makeshift table. "That hallway needs to be wider," she was saying. "If you're planning for future growth, you can't design for just today's enrollment." A foreman laughed. "You talk like you're staying here forever." Clara smiled slightly. "That's the idea." Daniel didn't mean to interrupt, but he did. "You think there will be future growth?" She looked up at him then, and for a brief second, neither of them moved. "I think there will be if we do this right," she said simply. Most people thanked him when they met him. Some avoided him. A few treated him like a benefactor carved out of stone. Clara just treated him like a man who happened to be standing there. "You're Mercer?" she asked. "Yes. I'm Clara Bennett. I'm supposed to make sure this school actually becomes something worth keeping." There was no awe in her voice. No hesitation. Just quiet responsibility. He found himself nodding before he realized it. Over the next weeks, Daniel started showing up more often than he intended. He told himself it was oversight, but he always arrived when Clara was there. Always stayed longer than necessary. Always watched her more than the workers. She worked like someone building a future she personally intended to live in. She argued with architects, adjusted budgets, rearranged timelines. But what stood out most wasn't her authority, it was her attention. She noticed everything. A broken fence, a tired worker, a child from the neighborhood who wandered too close just to watch the building rise. One afternoon, Daniel saw her crouched beside that child, explaining how libraries worked. "You can go anywhere in books," she told him. "Even places you've never seen." The boy asked, "Have you been everywhere?" Clara smiled. "Not yet. That's why I like schools." Daniel felt something shift in him then. Not sudden, not loud, just a quiet reordering. It was dangerous, he told himself. Getting attached to people who believed in things too much often ended in disappointment. But Clara didn't seem fragile in that way. She didn't believe in illusions. She believed in effort. And somehow that was worse, because it made her impossible to dismiss. The school rose slowly, like a promise taking physical form. By late summer, walls stood. Windows were installed. Paint was chosen. Soft blue, warm enough to feel safe, but bright enough to feel alive. Clara insisted on a mural in the main hallway, something local children could contribute to. It should belong to them before it even opens, she said. Daniel watched her paint alongside volunteers one evening. Sleeves rolled up, a smear of color on her cheek she hadn't noticed. He realized he had stopped thinking of the school as something he had given away. It had become something she was building, and maybe something he was beginning to stay for. The turning point came unexpectedly, as these things often do. A funding issue surfaced, one no one had anticipated. A larger district project had siphoned supplemental grants. Construction halted. Workers were reassigned. The town council argued. The optimism that had filled. Willow Creek began to drain like water slipping through cracked ground. Clara didn't panic. That was the strange part. She just worked harder. She made calls late into the night, drafted proposals before sunrise, met with officials who dismissed her before she even finished speaking. Daniel watched it happen from a distance, then closer, until one evening he found her still in the unfinished building, sitting alone in the echoing hallway. The lights were off except for one bulb swinging slightly overhead. "You should go home," he said. She didn't look up. "I will." "After this makes sense." "It might not," he said carefully. That made her pause. For the first time, she looked tired, not defeated. Just human in a way she usually avoided being seen. "Then I guess I'll have to make it make sense," she replied. Something in Daniel broke quietly at that moment. Not painfully, just irreversibly. He sat down beside her. "You don't have to carry it alone," he said. She gave a faint smile. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything neither of them had said yet. In the weeks that followed, Daniel did something he hadn't done since donating the land. He stepped in fully. Not as a benefactor, not as a distant figure, but as someone who refused to let something meaningful collapse. He made calls of his own, reopened conversations, used influence he rarely admitted he still had access to. Not for pride, not for legacy, for her. And somewhere between late-night meetings and early morning site visits, between arguments about budgets and shared silence over coffee, something unspoken began to form. Clara noticed it first. "You're different," she said one morning, watching him adjust a broken fence post himself. "Different how? Like you've stopped watching from the outside." He didn't answer right away, because the truth felt too exposed to say quickly. "I think I stopped a while ago," he finally admitted. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned back to the fence, but her voice softened. "Me too." The school opened in early fall. The ceremony was small, just families, workers, and townspeople who had waited too long for something like this. Children ran through the halls before speeches were even finished. Laughter filled rooms that had once been only drawings on paper. Daniel stood near the back, watching it all unfold. Clara stood at the front, speaking about beginnings, about communities building themselves through shared belief. When she finished, applause rose, not loud, not performative, real. Later, when the crowd thinned and the building settled into its first evening of purpose, Daniel found her in the hallway where the mural stretched across the walls. Children's handprints, bright and uneven, formed a living record of the town's future. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected gently. He nodded, then hesitated. Words had never been difficult for him before, but now they felt insufficient. "I didn't expect any of this," he admitted. "Neither did I," she said. The silence between them felt different now. Not uncertain, not temporary. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized the truth had been unfolding quietly all along, not in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in consistency, in presence, in shared purpose. "I gave the land away," he said softly, almost to himself. Clara turned toward him. "And I think I finally understand what it cost you," she said. He shook his head slightly. "It didn't cost me anything. Not anymore." For a moment, neither of them moved. The building around them was full of life. But in that narrow stretch of hallway, everything narrowed to something quieter, more personal. Clara stepped closer. "You built something here, Daniel," she said. "Not just the school." He exhaled slowly. "So did you." Outside, the evening settled over Willow Creek, soft and steady. Inside, in a school born from generosity and shaped by stubborn hope, two people stood in the space between what they had built. and what they were about to become. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt like they were standing alone.